Hello.
Hi,
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you? How
Yeah,
was
I'm
your
really.
stream?
Yeah, it was good. Thanks. Can't complain. I got bot raided pretty hardcore, so that was annoying.
Was that
Yeah,
from? Because I know you got raided by sourcing support. You got raided after that as well.
yeah, but no, it was like a bot raid. So basically,
Oh,
yeah, it shut my stream down like halfway through my stream, so
oh,
it's
holy
kind of
shit!
annoying. But yeah. It's my first time it's happened though, so I'll take it as a sign of success or something. I don't know.
You're big enough to be bot raided. That's it. You've got a target painted on you. That might not be a good
Yeah,
thing. It
yeah.
might be. I really appreciate you coming on. As said to chat, I know you've been streaming for like 60 hours already today, so
Yeah, no worries. It's
I
all good.
appreciate that. But yeah, I thought we can obviously just go on as long as you want, just in case you're
hmm
getting tired. I don't know how many energy drinks you've had.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We can have a good chat. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, I had a couple of topics in mind,
hmm
but obviously try and keep it a relatively chill conversation. When we started talking about this last week, I obviously wanted to think of some stuff. Hey, Raman, how are you? Not enough Brits, Brit superiority. True. This is Brexit Britain now. We're all going to get Spitfires. Lord Nelson's going to come back from the dead. It's going to be lit. Um, yeah, so you're coming up on, what is it, 10 months of streaming? Did you start in November or October?
Yeah, that's right. So my first stream was I can never remember. It's either the 19th or the 21st of November. 2019 was like my very first stream. So
Yeah. When you started out, did you have any sort of major expectations or concerns? What was the biggest things that sort of played on your minds when you were beginning?
so yeah, when I started, I guess like my biggest concern was like, what if no one watches me? Like that was it really. I think that like I kind of thought about what I wanted to cover, and I didn't have long enough to second guess myself as to whether it was good or not. Actually, there's another thing as well. I remember like being really worried about what I sounded like or if there was a problem. So my entire first stream, I had my headphones plugged into my tablet,
Yeah.
and I was listening to myself stream. Like it was really distracting. I don't know why I did that. It was a really weird thing that I did. So yeah, I think really it was just the sort of like, what if my voice goes wrong or something, and yeah, just the concern that no one would watch. Those were the two things I'd say. Yeah.
Thank you for the follow potato butt plug. It's funny you say that because like my setup is it's a weird sort of mix of like professional and really scuffed. I was saving up
Mm.
for years to get like a gaming PC, so I had the money to get a decent one, and then I bought a camera and stuff. But literally, my second monitor is a Bush TV that's about 6 years old, and it's propped up on a cardboard box.
Yes, that's what I like. That's
And
what I like to
I
hear.
literally had to prop it on the box because I haven't got a stand for my mic. So literally, like my mic originally was sitting more or less in the center of the TV. So like, if I was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
having to do stuff on Streamlabs, I was sort of snaking around the thing like that. But
yeah.
yeah, so are there any things that sort of happened over the past year that like really went differently than you expected? Maybe in terms of, for example, your interactions with your community, or how you do research or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think what having known that what streaming is like, because I actually streamed before, but it was like a more private thing. Like me and some friends just had this like clan. We called ourselves a clan, but it wasn't really that serious.
Yeah,
And we all streamed on Mixer, right? And I was used to like streaming to like one person or no people, and it was just like you stuck the stream on, and it was just for fun.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I guess my anticipation was that I'd have like quite a slow growth. Like I kind of anticipated that I'd probably be streaming to like under 10 people for as much as like a year, right?
yeah,
Um, and obviously setting my Discord up as well. When it started, obviously there was just me in there, and then there were two, and then there were three, then there were 10, 20, and then I just never really anticipated that like it was gonna grow as quickly as it did, right? Like I don't know, it just wasn't a thought in my mind that like I just figured I was just going to be another fucking dipshit doing React Andy content, and then it just seemed like there was a taste for what I was doing, and it just kind of grew, and yeah, it kind of blew me away, like how quickly each of my social media kind of profiles grew over
yeah,
time. So yeah, I think just the growth really is wasn't really anticipated. I think another thing as well is like just how like I don't know the right way to put this, but like the way that you become like kind of like a celebrity. Like I don't think of myself as a celebrity. That's super fucking cringe, right?
E-celeb.
An e-celeb, yeah. But the recognition that you get kind of fairly quickly, with your growth and whatnot. Like I was having a chat with someone yesterday on their stream, and I was introduced as like someone that's prominent, and it's Chud Logic. Everyone knows who Chud Logic is, and it's like, well, do they? Like, what the fuck? It's kind of a surreal thing, right? To get like a bit of notoriety, I guess you could call it. I don't know.
The infamous Chud Logic.
Yeah, exactly.
I was actually trying to remember when we first sort of started talking, because there's a group for, obviously most people probably won't know this, but there's like a group chat that sort of certain people in here are part of, and then obviously we're part of it as well. And the way I remember it is that like you sort of just turned up one day. Lou Waffle just called you the king of cock and balls torture. And that's the thing. It's like it wasn't just like you rammed your way in, obviously, but it's just like one day there was this Chud Logic in there. And hey, this is pretty cool. This guy's pretty cool. We all started chatting and stuff. And then I think, and this probably isn't the case, but the first time I ever actually remember content from you was when you appeared on the famous epic Jangles versus Conrad Golden stream, i.e. the stream that didn't actually happen.
Yeah. Well, because obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, there was this big debate plan between Conrad Golden, who people probably know from Twitter, and Jangles, right? And it didn't happen, and Jangles invited me on, and it was the first time I'd ever come on to like a show like that. So, obviously I was like a bit anxious. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh shit, to get invited onto a show, like what the fuck am I doing?
Well, I mean, you were on there with like Logic Guy and I think Vadim Nukus turned up for a bit, and Kraut maybe as well.
Yeah, Kraut was there. It was very surreal, and obviously I didn't have the confidence back then. I was kind of just like, didn't really say much and chips in here and there. But yeah, it was so strange that you would just get invited. Like I just got invited onto this random like panel almost, and we would having chatting about our ideas and stuff like that, and yeah, it was just everyone else was so comfortable with it, and I was a bit like, what the fuck's all this then, Yeah, because I wasn't even streaming at that point. I don't think. I think I just went on there as like a guest without even having like my own platform or anything like that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do draw attention, to be fair.
Well, I mean, that's intentional, right? So, obviously, like marketing. I don't know what way you want to term it, but there is obviously an element of promoting yourself to grow your stuff, right? And yeah, I think well, as Peter Coffin obviously says, attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas, and that's something that was always stuck with me since I first heard it, And
yeah,
I kind of knew that you had to garner attention to kind of grow what you're doing. And yeah, there's obviously different ways you can do that. So it's memes and shit posting seem to work for me, I guess. I don't know.
your previous career, you worked in sales, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How much do you reckon like stuff you learned from doing that job has actually helped you? Like sort of what you do now, like in terms, not necessarily in terms of promotion perhaps, but you're obviously a very sort of comfortable and confident speaker. Do you reckon that sort of experiences in the past actually helped with that?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And this is like something that I kind of think that particularly lefties can be a bit afraid of, right? Like they are concerned about engaging in behavior that under capitalism is kind of necessary to like do certain things, like networking, for example. I remember a long time ago now, I mentioned that I was networking or in some context, and someone sort of took issue with that and complained that I was using this capitalist term, and I was like, but that's just what you've got to do. Like it is what it is, right? Yeah. Like just because it's termed in a capitalist type way, like it's still an invaluable thing that you have to do to kind of get anywhere in this sort of space, right? So yeah, I think like having some of the knowledge of how to do this stuff and bringing it into a lefty space. Some people are a bit like, what the fuck, like that's like capitalism, and it's like, no, it's fucking not. It's just a tool that capitalists use to like grow their business or whatever, or meet new people, meet new business opportunities. But we can use it just the same, right? So yeah, definitely stuff like that, and just being able to speak comfortably for like a long period of time. We used to have like targets, so they'd say, right, you need to be speaking on the phone for like 4 hours today total, so cumulatively together. So you would obviously be mindful of like, right, I've got to try and keep this person on the phone and sell what I can to them, blah blah blah. So yeah, definitely having that mindset of talking for a long time, along with all the other stuff, probably has given me a bit of an advantage, shall I say?
Yeah, the thing is, like, have noticed this with especially smaller creators in the past, and it's completely understandable, especially if you haven't had any experience in like public speaking, either like telephonically or publicly or anything like that. Obviously, the nerves do come through for everyone when they start. One thing I personally had is the fact that I'm in this weird headspace where like I simultaneously love attention and being noticed, and at the same time I like to be as stealthy as possible. And so, like, at the moment, like, literally, I hate looking at myself. But one reason I've got a camera is because I kind of felt the need to almost, like, build up confidence with stuff like that. Because it does come naturally, which I assume you're saying, you've observed as well, So, yeah, it must have, like, in some ways personally helped, to be able to just, like, take the plunge and put yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my first stream, I remember I was, like, really nervous. And I was like, God, I think I probably still got a copy of the file somewhere. It'd be interesting to watch it, but and the thing is, that was just my first stream speaking by myself. Like, obviously, I started doing Chud night and booking guests, and I mean, now I joke about, like, I've joked a few times about recently, like clocking in at the meme factory, but that's essentially what I feel like now. It just feels like I'm just I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like I'm begrudging. Like, oh, for fuck's sake, I got to go stream. I'm like, great, it's time to stream. Let's go have some fun. But it's more of a process now. It's more of like kind of like going to work. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get into the habit and the routine. So it's less of like a nervous thing or something like that. It's more just like time to fucking get on with some content. I don't know.
I mean, you're punching in a shit ton. You're doing, what, 6 days a week at the moment, and you're doing like at least 4 or 5 hours a night or in the daytime.
Yeah, so I'm quite fortunate in that I don't, there's nothing that would prevent me from putting in as much time as I want,
Yeah.
And this is the kind of, I never know how to say this without sounding bad, but basically, the fact that COVID happened and the fact that there was lockdown meant that I was at home and able to pump loads of time into this. So. Yeah. Without that happening, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would have still got to the stage I am now, but it probably would have taken longer, right? So it's essentially like COVID kick-started my career, or whatever you want to call it, So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange to think that something so terrible that has affected the world so badly is like had a positive influence on what I'm doing, right? Like, it's kind of like a cursed thing. I don't know.
There's a blessing in a curse disguise. Actually, I might have got that background, but wrong way.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's something like that. Exactly. It's, obviously it's caused terrible fucking shit.
Yeah.
So if I had the choice, I'd have taken the longer path and not have all these people die. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but at the same time, it's not like you literally like directly benefited from people dying from a terrible virus. So there's probably not too much guilt to assign there.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about like the questions I wanted to ask, one thing that stuck in my mind, I don't know if you saw, but Xanderhol did a video recently about Turkey Tom, the drama YouTuber, basically criticising how Twitch streamers essentially, I don't want to misrepresent Turkey Tom's argument, even though I thought it was pretty bad, but essentially you like wheel steal content, especially if you're like a React Andy or something. But I think people, and I know I certainly did, before sort of I started really getting into Twitch. People do underestimate how much work goes on in the background, like how much preparation there is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even if it's kind of scuffed and you're not doing like super intensive like data type stuff, you still got to find stuff to talk about. You got to do a bit of research. Is this going to be interesting? Is that going to be interesting? And yeah, absolutely. And I think I know what you're talking about. So there were complaints about like, and this came from the Leafy videos, right? So Pokimane was reacting to, right? Yeah. In terms of like that, I think there is a kernel of like criticism that's legitimate, and that is that like, what some streamers do, which I disagree with, is they'll just like play a YouTube video and watch it, and maybe interject, not even pause it, just like a couple of times say the odd thing. And they'll then upload that clip to YouTube.
Yeah.
And what it does is it puts that video in direct competition with that thing, and it's something I'm conscious of. So, for example, there's someone called Kowalski who I watched one of their videos recently about Dukot, and I wanted to put some of the content onto YouTube. But what I did is I clipped it at the end to a relevant piece to what I wanted to do, and that leaves 20 minutes of video that isn't on my thing. So if someone wants to watch the whole thing, they need to go and watch the original video, right? So I think there's a balance that can be had between, hey, look, Twitch streamers do rely on reaction content from YouTube, but then if we do that and we put it on YouTube, well, maybe we can send people your way as well, right? So there's a certain transactional thing you can think of there. So it's not just that we're ripping someone's content, we're hopefully driving some viewers their way as well, potentially, you know. But I don't know, like some YouTubers, like obviously don't give a fuck about like Sargon of Akkad with 200k subs. Like, I don't give a fuck about like sending viewers his way. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
you know, other people where there's maybe more of an ideological agreement or they're like a decent person, it's kind of a different story, you know.
My first interactions with Twitch actually came, and I suspect this is probably the same for a lot of people in this sort of sphere that we're sort of in, came through Destiny. But the irony of that was that it was the YouTube VOD of the famous JonTron debate.
Right, yeah.
So I've personally always sort of seen the two as sort of lining up and having this symbiotic relationship, YouTube and Twitch. But at the same time, now that we see these things, these criticisms coming out, and then you've got like, you know, Keemstar is now battling against Zanderhall and things like that, it almost kind of seems inevitable that these two different sort of media forms would sort of create this factionalism that would be going at one another. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, everyone wants eyes on their content, right? And I guess that like with streamers are kind of more available and more accessible. Like people will watch like a Twitch stream for, you know, 3 hours, for example. They just sit for 3 hours and watch it, right? Whereas YouTube, it tends to be a bit more scattered in terms of when you'll get that attention, right? So yeah, it's kind of very similar, but also there's a few differences that kind of fuel that, you know. And obviously if you're like a YouTuber and people are enriching themselves off of your content, well yeah, you're probably gonna be a bit annoyed about that, right? But it's just kind of how it is. Like that's just the way it goes, you know. And as long as streamers aren't taking the piss, I don't know, I just don't think that's much of an issue, right?
Yeah, it should all mesh together and sort of overlap it should in theory be able to overlap quite comfortably. Thank you for the follow, Snowdrift. How are you doing? The Pokemon drama. Hello, Noopy. Good to see you. The Pokemon drama is a good example of that. Yeah, absolutely. I know you've basically just started what you're calling, you know, Satanic Meatball AK4. Thank you so much for being the 50th follower. I really appreciate that so much. Thank you to everyone who's followed. But yeah, thank you so much. I know yesterday you did a big stream on this, so a lot of people here are probably already aware a lot of the meat of it. But you've started what you know, tongue in cheek, we call the parasocial arc. In terms of thinking back to like how you were when you started out, your expectations and that, did you have any major concerns or expectations about essentially? I don't know if you won't like me saying this, but essentially becoming almost like a figurehead or leader of a community, especially when you set up your Discord server, for example.
Well, when I didn't really think of it like that. I just, you know, I remember like, you know, calling on Discord a few people who like I had a sort of relationship with and being like, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool to start a Discord, a Chud Logic Discord? Like, yeah, that'd be really fun. And we were kind of laughing about some of the ways we could do it, and it was just like fun. And then we set it up, and you know, people started coming in, but it never really felt like it was like building me as the figurehead. It was just like a bunch of people that kind of watched my content, but they were sort of on my like I didn't see it as like a viewer content creator relationship at that point. You know, I just saw it as like a fellow shit poster, and I just happened to make a few videos, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't really see it as too much of an issue like right at the start. I think like over time though, like some things have happened like behind the scenes, you know, some private stuff that's made me very concerned that like, you know, there's some people who definitely will form like relationships, like parasocial relationships with you or asymmetrical relationships, and it's like, yeah, that concerns me a lot, and it, you know, I think seeing other content creators lean into that and the effects that has had as well, it kind of made me think like, fuck, this is bad. Like, not only is this an issue, but people are advocating for it and promoting it and think as if it's a good thing, and it's like, but it's not. It's all, there's no positives here, and and it's kind of why I've got this sort of urgency, I guess you could call it. Like now, I'm just like, fuck. Like I feel like this is a really under discussed issue, and whilst I'm no expert, I think if I can maybe just talk about it a bit, maybe there's a bit wider conversation, and I don't know, like other streamers maybe can start to talk about this and highlight the risks and the problems that come with kind of developing these kind of toxic relationships with the streamer. I don't know. It's worrying, and because it's so new, there's not even like much data on it, right? Like it's not even like broadly studied, like what's the consequences of a relationship between a streamer and a viewer, and how can that be manipulated?
Yeah.
How can that be taken advantage of, right?
I get what you're saying about the urgency of it. In fact, that stream last night, I don't want to be overly dramatic, even though that's my nature, but I was actually kind of stunned by the sort of thought and the prospect that this hasn't been discussed before in the way that you're approaching it, and there is a certain amount of urgency to it. It's one of those things, it's just like, it's been taken for granted that like this is how it is, this is just an inevitable consequence of it. So I think it is actually really cool that someone's trying to address it, and as you say, it will, you're not the expert here, you're not like a psychologist or anything, but if it starts a conversation, then that in of itself is really valuable. Hi Kezbox, you're right. So yeah, I mean, obviously as well, you've got your idea about asymmetrical relationships. It's going to be interesting to see how this, quote unquote arc sort of bears out. But yeah, that was quite surprising. I found myself sort of musing quite heavily on a lot of that conversation. I think there was something you said as well, which I thought was fairly profound, because again, it's something I wonder if other content creators, especially on Twitch, have considered. It was when you were talking about Jack Saint, and you mentioned the fact that, you in some ways could be considered friends, but also you sort of try and keep in mind that you're more, I think you said colleagues was the word. And I was just wondering, like, in my head, I was just like, is it actually unique that Chud has said that? How many, like, I wonder how many other creators would say, oh no, I'm friends with all these people I interact with. Have you ever got that sense that there's not just like an intensity in the parasocial relationship between creator and audience, but there is between creators themselves?
Yeah, for sure. And like I know streamers who are quite explicit, and they're like, yeah, I'm not really friends with anyone. I just kind of, I've got this relationship or whatever. And then other people, like you do develop like more of a friendship with. And for me, I find it quite easy to kind of, differentiate and be like, right, I know this person is like a friend, and I can, engage with them in a slightly different way than say this person who's like more professional, when you have more of a, like a work colleague, right? Like I said on the stream. But I think like particularly like for some people, especially like smaller creators, and there's that like power dynamic in terms of like, well, someone's got all this social capital, all this clout, etc. There's potential there for someone that could be like a really small creator and get the wrong end of the stick and think this relationship is like more than it is, right? When really it's just like, like if you've got like a certain amount of like social capital and followers and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to have like a strong friendly relationship with like all of these people that are also streamers but happen to be like quite a lot smaller than you. It's you see what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, like obviously, like one reason I've always like wanted to have you on stream is obviously because we've spoken in the past, we get on really well, but also I didn't want to be churlish and like sort of nudge it away and disregard the fact that obviously you have a significant amount of clout, and you being on my stream is obviously going to help my growth out enormously, and I think in a way like I hope that doesn't come across as cynical sounding, but it's just it's something you have to be honest about, if only with yourself.
Yeah, well, obviously, like there's people that I've known from the start, and like there's people that I've spoken to a lot, but obviously as I've become more busy, I've not always been able to like keep in touch with them or be in regular contact with them. And it's not because like, I think I'm better than them or something. Like it's quite the opposite. Like I see them still as like, damn, they were with me from the start, and I really appreciate that. There's a whole bunch of people that a lot of people in that group chat, for example, that I think of that. But it's just, you're like passing ships in the night sometimes, particularly when like a lot of what I do is on Twitch, and like for example, One Species is like a YouTuber, right? And I don't know, we sort of move in similar circles, but not quite the same circles. Just you see what I mean? And it's like I don't know. I kind of want to do like a reunion of sorts, or just hang out with like all the people that like were there from the start. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like I miss having like the regular interactions with like the group chat, or
Yeah.
you know because you probably remember like right at the start I used to do like just voice chats in my Discord, just that anyone could join. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, you were constantly in there. Yeah, we had some great times in it. It'd be almost be like a high school reunion in some way, especially like the early Chud nights as well. So
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is like obviously if I like, and this isn't to like suck myself off, but like if I joined like the voice chat of my Discord now, it would just be, and there'd be like loads of people in there,
yeah,
and for one thing, like I obviously am very busy, so I don't have time to like sit in a voice chat on my Discord. But secondly, it's just like that would just be like, how would you have a conversation if there's like 30 people in there, or whatever it would be? Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
yeah. I don't know. Like I think that like, cause I'm honestly not like an aloof person in any respect. I don't see myself as better or worse or whatever based on anything. Like it's we're all human, right?
hmm.
But unfortunately, um, the reality is there is a degree of aloofness involved, but it's kind of imposed on you rather than being like I'm going to be an aloof asshole. It's like I just don't have the time or like I just don't have the time. I don't have time to do the stuff that I used to do, right? And you do miss it. Like obviously, like I used to love those like just chilled out Discord voice chats and stuff, but you know, it's just the way of this type of scene. Like you start to grow a following and stuff, and yeah, I don't know. It's just yeah.
Yeah, it's pragmatic. You know, it's just the inevitable sort of consequence of the situation you're in and sort of growth that you have.
Mm,
It's it's a transactional thing as well. It's one of those things that I think other people, especially audiences, might miss as well. It's just again, it's the inevitability of it. I think it's interesting as well. Just like sort of quickly, sort of slightly going back on the colleague thing. I obviously move in some slightly different circles. I'm sort of stuck
mm,
in like two different worlds because obviously like I really love doing the political stuff and being involved with people like you and the people in the chat and things like that. But obviously like with the other work I do, I'm in the music world as well. So like I talk to like label heads and musicians and stuff like that. And it is interesting to see how those sort of dynamics don't really change, even though like the formats are different. So for example, like I'll spend time in your chat when you're streaming, and then like there's a musician I know called Becky Machine. I'll hang out when
mm.
she's doing stuff. She's recording her album literally live on Twitch. And then I've got
Oh
another
wow.
one I follow, a woman called Kinsuku, who does like covers on Twitch. And it's interesting to see that it's not, even though like politics, especially on stream, is obviously more drama focused and it has that energy underneath it. The relationships and so by extension the responsibility that a streamer needs to make sure they maintain doesn't really change. And that's the thing. That was a sort of, in some ways, kind of an almost like a profound thing to me experience. It sort of all just like crosses over in many different ways.
Yeah, definitely. These dynamics are all kind of like similar across the different spaces, and I think one thing that people should do is content creators. I mean, even if they're small, is treat it like you know like a an office or whatever. Like it kind of is like a big virtual office that we all exist in.
Yeah.
you know. And you might have someone that's just come in and they're like the new starter and no one really knows them, so they've got to network and get around and speak to people and get to know people, right? And there's obviously a certain amount of people that will be like, oh hey, yeah, cool, like you want to do stuff, let me introduce you to this person, they can help you, they can do this, they can do that, so you know it's one of those things where but one thing I think as well about it is it's weighted to people who are able to engage in those sorts of social interactions. Like if you're neurodivergent,
Mm.
um you are automatically at like a disadvantage because you know in certain cases it might not feel comfortable, or you might get anxiety, or whatever the thing is, and that can have like a negative impact. And it's kind of a bit unfair, really. Like to have that disadvantage, and it's not even like your fault, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
And obviously, yeah, it's obviously something like beyond your control as well. And by the very nature of the internet, especially the anonymity that people in chat would have, if you get your kicks out of abusing people, and they are everywhere, we know this. You'll know this in particular from your chat. That's especially harsh. I mean, like there are there are like creators that I really respect because they've been able to like sort of push through that. There's a British Twitch streamer called Sweet Anita, who she's like a 2,000 view Andrea. I mean, like she's pretty massive, but she has Tourette's syndrome. So literally, like on stream, even, you know, she's very eloquent when she talks, but obviously, like if there's a lull in the conversation or if she's playing a game, she's focusing. She's constantly like making noises with her mouth. She twitches, so obviously she gets a shit ton of abuse through, you know, not necessarily like neurodivergence. I don't know how the condition works, but you know, I have enormous respect for people who can still push on through those challenges. You know, and I think other people just like, you know, underestimate like how challenging that sort of thing can be, as you say, especially if someone's neurodivergent in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is, someone might come on a stream and they engage in a way that isn't like quote unquote normal. Like obviously, you know, what is normal is a social construct, of course. But you know, and I think the great thing about these spaces is that if someone comes on and they're not engaging in a way that you sort of anticipate based on your understanding of like traditional social interactions, you know, there's a bit more leeway there, right? So, you know, it's not, you know, people aren't gonna go as hard on someone or kind of be mean to them or bully them, right? But the issue is, again, like engaging with other, you know, people that maybe aren't quite on the left, the same way you are, like more liberal one and many people, stuff like that. Like if you start to engage with those sorts of audience, well, that's when you can start to get a little bit of the ableism starting to come in, right? And yeah, but you know, it can make it very difficult to branch out, and you end up sometimes in just like very introverted kind of space. And yeah, it's I don't know. The thing is like I don't even know if there's an answer to it or like a solution. Do you know what I mean? Like what do you even do about that? Like how do you even begin to fix an issue that's that broad, right?
I think we just had three pretty really good comments in the chat. So Furious Magician said, yeah, Nita cops a lot of shit. Female streamers in general, actually. So she already, obviously she has like the specific Tourette's thing, but she's already, you know, got the thing of being just literally a woman on the internet. Then Ruffle Bricks came in with, you also have a lot of people accusing her of being an actor. Again, you know, that's another load of shit to deal with. And then Kez has pointed out that she cops shit for being disabled without having tics. So it's just, you know, in some ways it's almost like you can't win no matter what you do. You know, she tries to Anita tries to represent herself in a lot of ways as being like a positive role model in some ways, you know. Sorry, Kez, did I misgender you? I'm sorry. Anita, yeah, you can't win, basically. You know, it's on so many fronts that, you know, and obviously as a man, like you know, don't have certain disadvantages from the off, even if you're not neurodivergent and things like that. You know, it's astonishing. Yeah. But yeah.
No, definitely. I totally agree. You know, it's always something that I try and sort of think of is you know, like having people on that, you know, are neurodivergent. It's about trying to create a space where they're not, you know, as comfortable as possible, right? Like that's the goal, I guess. And you know, I was talking about this on stream today, but there's a sort of thing in the panel scene now which I'm kind of a bit uncomfortable with, and it seems like we're moving towards this situation where there's going to be, you know, conflict and stuff is fine, but I think there's some people, particularly people that are just coming in and maybe haven't even really started yet on the panel, but they're looking at the conflict, but they're not in and haven't been doing it, so they don't understand it. So they think, right, if I get conflict, I'll get views. So, well, that's easy. Get someone that's a fucking Nazi on, and that's the fucking drama. But it's like that's not consideration for like the harm that might be being done. And obviously, you know, people that are already in the community, we're very concerned. Like we don't want to turn it into a shit show, right? Like we want to make sure that people are safe and comfortable and stuff. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we're doing this conference, I guess you could call it. You know, it's still very early days, it's still to be planned out, but you know, the hope is that we can hopefully get everyone together, have a chat, and maybe just get some basic standards or something that we can all agree that, hey, maybe this is how we should all operate as a baseline level, and you know, hopefully we'll be able to keep this a friendly, safe I hate the term safe space, but it's a bit of a meme. But you know, that's it really. Like, you know, yeah, it doesn't have to be safe space in terms of like, oh, the conservative meme, but like, at the very least, that a trans person could go on a panel safe in the knowledge that they're not going to have their very identity questioned, and they're not going to be expected to defend themselves against someone questioning their identity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. Okay, so let's move on to something a little bit different. Basically, something more related to the content you make. The first question I have is, the people you tend to talk about, especially since the beginning, like, you know, all these smaller right-wing ANCAP, you know, rightoid streamers, where the fuck do you find these people? Like, how much work do you have to put into finding these people?
So yeah, basically, there's a few kind of different methods that these people come to you. Obviously, the big thing is having like a recommendations, and then people will send you stuff that they find, you know. But like you know, there's been ones where I've been watching, like, say, Mr. Dapperton, right? And then you click around and you look at like the other channels that they've got, and maybe they're subscribed to like another channel, and you go and look at them. You're like, this is pretty cringy. And then you look at their channels, and they've got another channel further from that. And then on that channel, they're hosting a video from another channel, and you go and look at that. And, you know, you've kind of done 6 degrees of separation to get to like this, you know, weird, obscure YouTuber with like 600 subs that's got this like real cringe aesthetic. And you're like, yes, let's talk about this dude, you know?
So the algorithm's doing a lot of the legwork there.
Yeah, for sure. But the thing is, like, well, Granny Sargon's a good example where I literally was looking at it was Voltaire's Ghost, you know, and I can't even remember how I found Voltaire's Ghost, but from Voltaire's Ghost, I saw this weird icon. I clicked on it, and I saw that clip of her, you know, saying whatever it was she said. You know, I can't even remember. I was like, "Fuck me, this is great! Like, this is fucking gold!" And it's like, off we go. Let's watch this. You know, yeah. I don't know. It's good, and it's fun for content. I think my concern, obviously, now though, is like, I don't want to just like cover people that have got 200 subs, because it's like, it's kind of a bit like punching down, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, so in some ways it'll make it probably not too much more difficult, but it's still something you've got to keep in mind that's going to change the nature of your research and your content. Sorry, my voice is going down a couple of octaves. You mentioned earlier that you sort of were like a small streamer in like a very sort of personal sense. So obviously that touches on the fact that you were, in a very vague sense, a content creator, quote unquote. You're also, I don't know if this is a fair description, but you have described yourself as like a recovering former anti-SJW. Did you ever have any inklings, even if it was like not necessarily doing Twitch or something, did you ever have any inklings that you might want to try like being like an anti-SJW YouTuber at any point? Did you ever look at like people you're watching thinking, I want to give that a go?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I remember fairly vividly like getting into it all, watching the content. You know, I didn't have a Twitter account at the time, thank God. Otherwise, imagine having like a history of shitty tweets to deal with. But I used to like watch, you know, your Sargon of Akkad, your Milo, your all these people. I was like, oh, I'd like to do that. I'd like to give that a go, you know. But I was like working at the time. I suffered with depression quite a bit as well. So, you know, fortunately, it never came to pass. Otherwise, I'd probably be, you know, in similar positions to other people that are now trying to get out of that, like, you know, struggling against their backlog of content, which is just full of like really fucking trash. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad that like I never really acted on that, and it wasn't until I realised how full of shit all of these people are that yeah, I started to make content. Because the thing is maybe I would have been doing it and I'd have come to that same realization. But then if I've got a YouTube account and I'm earning a lot of money, well, I don't know, like, would I go with my morals, or would I go shit, and would I just lean into the grift at that point, you know?
And that's the thing, it's easy to turn around and look at someone and say, oh, you know, they're, you know, why are they grifting? You know, why can't they stick to their principles? You know, obviously, you know, people like Ariel Scarcella, for example, who, you know, it's debatable that if she's a grifter or not. She's a grifter, but to be fair, you know, you can be perhaps undeservedly charitable and say, well, if I was, as you say, if I was in that position, would I be doing the same thing? And honestly, like, I try to be someone who sticks to their guns in terms of their values and morals, but I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to suck myself off and say that I wouldn't ever do that, you know, because you can't know for sure, you know. But you know, it's weird like that. Were there any let's do a hypothetical. Was like would you say someone like Sargon was like your favourite, and would you say that you could have seen yourself doing basically like a This Week in Stupid kind of thing?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, like I don't know. I found some of Sargon's stuff a bit boring, but I think that like at the time, I like I sort of thought, well, he's boring, but he's a smart dude, right? Like, so of course I'm not going to understand some of the stuff he talks about, And looking back now, it's like, well, no, it's not that. It's the fact that it was just fucking gibberish, right? Like that's why it was so difficult to understand. So yeah, I absolutely saw myself as slotting in to a Sargon type, being British as well, right? Like I saw myself slotting in quite nicely to a Sargon style of content.
Yeah.
Like all of his old dramas, like fucking like the Jess Phillips thing and the tweeting gay porn and alt-right. I thought that was funny at the time. I laughed along. I was like, this is really funny, right? And you wanna be part of that. You want to be the one dropping the memes, and you've been led to believe that it's only on the right where the people are the memers and they're having fun.
Yeah.
The left can't meme. The left are boring. They're just totally off for fucking saying this word or that word that's bad. Like whatever the thing, but and they present like the worst examples of these people and be like, look how awful they are, and it really pushed you away from engaging because you had this perception that, oh well, I want to meme and I want to have fun. Well, this is the only place I can do that, right?
Also, that's the side that has the facts and logic, obviously, that can blast the SJWs. So why wouldn't you want to be on that side of it?
Yeah, exactly. So, you end up, you're kind of like trapped in some ways in your own head because, you're fed all this bullshit, and you think that that's the only option. You don't, you're not introduced to like class analysis. You don't even get to touch that stuff because you've gone as far as like liberal lib poll. You think this is bullshit, but you're not. You're shown the other side. You're shown the anti-SJW right-wing side, and that's where you end up going, right?
Yeah, and also obviously any sort of class analysis, critical theory or anything is and obviously Sargon has actually talked about this explicitly. It's cultural Marxism. So if you do want to get into any sort of like deeper analysis or anything, you are in that case also participating in something that the SJWs do, something that you as a big memer, hilarious, rational, facts and logic anti-SJW, you want to keep away from that. And Lou Waffles obviously brought up the parentheses in there for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that like people have got this attitude of, well, I never got into that. I never fell into that trap, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but like everyone's circumstances are different, right? Like I was like mega fucking depressed when I was fucking getting into all that shit. And listening to Jordan Peterson, it kind of like, it was like he was telling you the truth, And, having it explained that women are, this, that, and the other. But the other thing as well is like, because I was never like an incel. I always like was fine with women, but like, I treated women terribly when I was like an anti-SJW. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like super egregious, but like I was like a fuck boy. Do you know what I mean? Like back at the time, and that's the thing. These kind of attitudes, like they fuel you and they feed into that, right? And you end up in a position where you're just a real horrible person, and you try and tell yourself that you're not, and at the time you believe it, but looking back now, it's. I really am like resentful of the fact that these people essentially for their own enrichment fed me just bullshit and led me to be, probably one of the like the worst versions of myself, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it brought out something hideous in you. And I think that's a lot of thing like, especially interactions I've had with former anti-SJWs and Sargon fans on Twitter, for example. It's for a lot of them, regardless of, their gender or their age or their ethnicity or anything like that, it's a similar story. They did sort of hit this point where they realised not only were the things that they were sort of taking from someone like Sargon was just horse shit, but also they didn't like the person that they felt themselves becoming influenced to be. Thank you for the follow, No Nothing. Also, Radinsky's just said facts and logic, but Gad Sad had a meltdown when I corrected him about the European Court of Human Rights. So, exactly. So even the big brain doctors within the movement keep fucking up. But yeah, I don't know. It's tricky, and it's understandable as well, and it's easy to like I sort of I've said this before. I kind of consider myself like an OG SJW. I never had an anti-SJW phase. A lot of that was because like pre the Destiny Jontron thing. I had no interaction with this sphere of YouTube, especially. Like, I missed the new atheist era. I missed the anti-SJW era. It was only because, like, there was a machinima show called ETC, which was like a pop culture news show. And obviously, Jontron was, big YouTuber, well respected in that. And they did this, they did coverage of the Destiny debate. So I knew Jontron by reputation. I'd never fucking heard of Destiny. So I thought, okay, well, this is fucking mental. And I checked it out. And that's how I ended up here. So for me, it's sort of, I do feel a little removed from it. But sometimes I sort of think, well, yeah, I could have probably ended up in that same space if I had been around then. It's quite a striking thing to actually contemplate, to be honest, how different I could have been, So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's the thing is like, and whilst like I totally understand, people have their issues, their concerns, their criticisms, frustrations with like people that have made that content. It still exists, and there's the question mark of what do we do about that? What do we do with this content that is potentially harmful? And there's that whole conversation to have. I always, I guess, have had a bit of and it's easy for me to do as like a cishet white dude, but of course, but it's like I understand that journey, and the only difference between me and one of these people that has made content is that they took the impetus to go and make the content, right? Like I could have been one of them potentially. Like I could have been a skeptic. Like if because if you think about how it's gone for me, and how I've got like a fairly good YouTube channel that's doing well, a Twitch stream, whatever. Like if I'd have put that same energy into being a skeptic, like. I mean, fuck, like, what could I have ended up as? Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's like a dark alternate Star Trek universe where you've got like a goatee beard instead of a big bushy one, where you're a anti-SJW YouTuber, like going to MythCon every year.
Oh God, yeah, it's so cringy to think about, but yeah, it's perfectly feasible that would have been the case, like fuck.
Yeah. Lewd Waffles just said Leafy might be debating Destiny, so this could be the new John. Jesus Christ. Wow. Holy shit.
Well, that's good content, that's for sure.
That's going to be great content. It's also probably going to be a massive clusterfuck. But another thing I was just wondering, like, obviously Fort Slime recently has been having interactions with Mr. Caleb Morpin, friend of Andrew Anglin and stuff. And then we've also got, like, The Hill with Crystal Ball and that. And I was just wondering, like, Xanderhall's talked about how, like, as we said earlier, Leafy, Keemstar, these could be the new anti-SJW figures. I'm wondering if, like, we're going to also have to worry a lot more about figures coming from the sort of far left itself. So explicitly, I'm thinking about Caleb Morpin. Is that something that you might sort of think could be something we'd have to sort of focus partly on in the future? Especially that more reactionary side of the far left.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, the thing for me is someone like Caleb Morpin has got no... Even like Jason Unruh, like, memeing on Jason Unruh is fucking funny, right? Yeah. Like, he's a bit of a meme, and it's just fun to do, right? Caleb Morpin, though, like... And this applies to both of them, really, but they've got no, like, mainstream appeal, really. Like, they're quite niche figures.
Yeah.
And again, like, attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas. The problem sometimes is by giving them attention, you're just helping them, right? And I think, like, this is best sort of shown with, like, there was a lot of focus on those figures, and making a few videos about them is fine. Like, whatever, it is what it is. But it definitely got to the stage where I was thinking, like, damn, there's a lot of content coming out about these people. Like, I didn't even know Caleb Morpin was before he went on, like, Vosh's stream, and I think that with some of these people, there is a degree of, like, you can ignore, like, them sometimes, and maybe that's the right thing to do, right? Like, there gets to a point where, right, I've made a couple of videos now, maybe it's time to move on, and that's it. I've made my content about them, and that's that. I don't know, like, I think, okay, like, this isn't necessarily about, like, Caleb Morpin as such, but one thing I've kind of noticed more broadly is I feel like sometimes the left is like constantly worried about, the class reductionists in the cupboard, or the fucking Nas bowls under the bed, or the tankies under the bed. Now, are there people out there with harmful views? Like, yeah, absolutely, of course there are. There's like people who have got like really shit takes on like gender identity, and they say horrible things about trans people, and from like a class lens and shit like that. Yeah, sure, there's people like that exist. I guess I'm just not convinced that it's like a significant threat, because if you consider there's none of these figures have got any, or even close in like over here to like any sort of systemic power. It's like what can they do except for cause harm within our communities? And we can hopefully push back against that a little bit, whereas like the right, they've got the systemic power to actually act on their like fucked up ideas, so
I think I agree with figures in general, but Lube Waffle just said as well, Morpin is on Russia Today, so there's there's benefit there to attacking him. Like, I remember the first time I saw him, he debated Destiny, and he did just come across as like a weird, rather milquetoast clown. And then obviously his debate with Vosh, it escalated, and then it's, Steve Pape, it sort of, people started focusing on the fact that, yeah, he appears on Russia Today. I think he's done stuff with Iran, state media and things like that. So Morpin is probably worth attacking a lot more, because he technically has some influential, some almost institutional influence, even if it's obviously not within the United States itself. He's someone who could be drawing people into a very sinister direction. And obviously, again, like Crystal Ball's another one. So I think that there is something like worth keeping in mind there. But at the same time, yeah, as you'll know better than this, as a content creator who primarily focuses on politics, how much attention do you want to give these people? But again, Caleb Morpin also is in. I know they're a complete fucking meme and fucking despicable. Like like he's had interactions with people from the Communist Party of Great Britain, for example. So someone like him specifically is definitely worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I guess like for me, I look at, and there's people covering them and stuff, and for me, I just like I don't really know. Like I personally like wouldn't think to respond to like a Caleb Morpin video, and I guess yeah, sure. If there's people that are looking to do that, that's great. But I guess that like just don't like overdo it too much, and it's that balance of is if your concern is debunking them, or drawing attention to how shitty they are, it's like, are you doing that for the right reasons? Like, are you doing it because you want to do that, or is it because you're getting the views? You know, and are you then getting views and then drawing attention to someone where they could become perhaps like irrelevant, right? Like, so it not irrelevant. No one ever becomes truly irrelevant, but you're kind of just helping to boost their career potentially at some points, So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to move on, we don't have to go on this too long because it's something I know you discussed last night, but again, this was another thing I thought while you were discussing it was the this tweet from Mel, this infamous image. And one thing I was thought about while I was listening to you covering this was, you can actually see this, right? You're actually watching the stream.
Oh wait, sorry, one sec.
It's the Ash Coffin shoe.
Oh yeah,
Avengers thing. I'm just wondering, like, is there a rising tide, or at least in terms of visibility of like certain tendencies or ideas within the online left that need to be addressed by the community overall, specifically something like misogyny? Is this like some self-reflection we may be neglected? Because being on the left, you obviously tend to have more liberal opinions, you tend to be more pro-feminism and things like that. Do you think it's finally bubbling to the surface that there's something there that needs to be addressed more?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see an image like that get so much criticism, it kind of makes you realise, like, fuck, like there's a lot of people out there who like are seemingly engaging with this in like an extremely misogynistic way, and the thing I always try and think is, if it was a bunch of fellas, what would the reaction be? And I just don't think, if it was like Hassan and Destiny or whoever it is, I just don't think there would be that same reaction. There'd be like people criticizing it, of this person shit, that person shit, fine. But it was the way that like their appearances were being attacked, That's what I thought was really strange. And I mean, I say I thought it was strange. It's kind of to be expected though, because there is this like kind of ironic misogyny, and I think what that comes out of is that, like, broadly speaking, like even like ironic racism is considered bad, right?
Yeah.
Even ironic, like transphobia is considered bad. But even thinking back to before, I don't do this anymore, but back when I was, like, say, just using left book and I was getting into like lefty ideas a bit more, I kind of felt like ironic misogyny was kind of safe. It was okay to do that. Who are you hurting? What's the problem with being a little bit ironically misogynistic? It's fine. But then you come to realize that the mechanisms are still the same, and you're still potentially loading onto women by acting that way additional shit when they've got enough shit to deal with as it is, right? And yeah, I think that, like, Kez making a good point in chat, in that the panel scene is, like, if you're femme presenting on a panel, if it's not dealt with correctly, it can lead to some pretty misogynistic interactions. And there's been a few examples I've seen myself, where, and whilst primarily it's been like right wingers, there's no doubt about it, like, lefties can do this as well. It's not unique to the right. And the trouble is a lot of this discourse, like, happens on Twitter. So, like, how do you possibly contend with the idea of having all these people being shitheads and trying to tell them, like, come on, cut it out? Like, I don't know, it's very difficult, because scolding people, telling people off, doesn't help change people's minds, doesn't really get people to kind of engage with criticism and act. Like, it's like an amorphous blob of people. Like, how do you wrangle with that? Like, it's a very difficult question, and I don't know what the answer is.
And obviously there's an extra layer of engagement that you have to go through with people like that, because if it was like, again, going back to the analogy of a workplace, for example, that a personal face-to-face interaction, it'd be easier to talk someone down from that or challenge someone on that. But obviously, as sincere as anyone tries to be on Twitter, for example, you're ultimately presenting an avatar of yourself. You're not representing your true self, even though you try to as much as possible. So that's obviously another layer. It's going to make it even harder to sort of talk these people around or down, because you have to go through that extra layer of either anonymity or the confidence that it comes from not being in a personal, in like face-to-face or real-world interaction. So there's another entire dynamic there you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, it's difficult. Like, and the thing is we're all just playing into the mechanisms of, and the gamified nature of Twitter, with like quote tweets and dunking and all that shit. So we're kind of trapped in this system, and because it's like in some ways the only option, it seems, for some of this stuff, we've made Twitter the one-stop shop for political discourse, memes, justice being dished out, through dogpiling and that sort of shit, and the so-called cancel culture. Like, it's become all of these things to us because it's the only option. But if you actually look at it, it's a really shit way to do any of those things, except for maybe memes. But political discourse, you got a character limit, right? Like, you want to dish out justice to someone for having a bad take. Well, they end up getting dogpiled because the word spreads and everyone wants to get their fucking little dunk in. None of these things are positive or have a beneficial influence on any of this stuff. But it's kind of like the only option we've got, and especially for marginalized people, it could potentially be their only voice in the world. Or maybe someone stuck at home for whatever reason. COVID has really exacerbated this. So yeah, it's really fucked, and it's like, I don't know, like, without saying like capitalism bad, it's like, well, what is the answer? Like, to me, the answer is, well, Twitter's got to inherently change systemic root level for this to get better, and that's not going to happen. So the answer is, do we, I guess, try and help each other out and talk about this? But I don't know, it just seems like an insurmountable problem, to be honest.
Well, again, drama is currency on Twitter. It drives engagement. That's the reason, for example, that, in an ideal world, Donald Trump's many TOS violations would have had him kicked like 10 years ago or something. But obviously, he's a reliable source of traffic. And then, even on the smallest level, the smallest, like, three-figure follower Andy on there is still someone who's going to keep those numbers running. So, and then, I mean, like, again, it's like, also, again, because it also plays into my thing I said earlier about the fact that obviously I have experienced like also existing on like music Twitter and music Twitch and etc. There's obviously drama in those, but in fact in the synthwave community there's been a shit ton of stuff around like misogyny and transphobia recently, which has been quite depressing. But it does give me the sense of like thinking about other worlds, and obviously the most important one is the fact there's something which I think we're all guilty of forgetting at one time or another, is that Twitter is not the real world. It's the internet is not the real world. My brother is only 2 years older than me. He has a Facebook account he never uses. He's never been on Twitter. He's barely only found out what Twitch was since I started doing it. And most people, I don't know, obviously social media influence has been huge, especially, for example, during the 2019 election. Here, the Brexit debate, and obviously the 2016 election. But even people sort of our age, not all of us are engaged in the political debate and are going to be swayed by that on social media. And also, I think in the other direction, LSP tweeted something about this the other day, and it also ties into something you said last night about like the circus, how essentially nothing like political content creators like you do is ultimately that important. But then you'll have someone like Dylan Burns who is out there. Dylan actually works at it. He works with unions. He does canvassing and stuff. And again, I think that's an interesting case study in like the different dynamics and the different way it all works. If there were more Twitch streamers who go on panels who are out there doing sort of solid political activism, maybe the environment on Twitter, for example, might be better and more sort of fruitful.
Well, I think the problem is the amount of people who are on Twitter and are also doing like offline stuff is probably quite small. I think the vast majority of the online left are just people bored, and they've adopted leftism not as a, they're not looking to do anything with it. They just like the aesthetic. Like, look at all the fucking hammer and sickles and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck's that? Like, it's nothing. Like, and there's some people that do both. Don't get me wrong, but I think broadly on the whole, it tends to be the people that are the online left that are shit posting. It's like, that's what they're doing. Like, that's what they think is the right thing to do. Like, I remember, for example, I saw one account, and they had in their profile like, "Oh, I'm this is an I'm an anti-fascist. I'm an anti-fascist activist." I looked for their profile, and it seemed like what they were doing is just like, finding out like tenuous links between someone that had posted something yikes and was like quote tweeting them and atting these companies that they had some association with. And I looked at it and I thought, damn, I hope that like that's just like a thing. Like, I hope they're doing something else to call themselves an anti-fascist activist, because like that's not really activism, like quote tweeting and atting companies, right? And I think this is a problem more broadly in that people think more of what they're doing than it actually is. Like, you can quote tweet Ben Shapiro 100 times and fucking dunk on him and tell him everyone is an idiot. Great, it's fun, it's a meme, whatever, but you're not actually doing anything really. You just like, what's that achieving? You're not going to debunk it. No one's going to look at that and go, oh yeah, Ben Shapiro is wrong. Like, it's an irrelevance. It's for fun. And if you want to do that in your leisure time on social media, that's fine. Like, I don't care what people do with their time. It's up to each individual. But I want people to be honest with themselves and self-reflect and self-interrogate and go, is what I'm doing. Basically, I've got a goal. My goal is to shitpost. So I shitpost. Well, fine. But if your goal is to push leftism forward or be an activist or, do something tangible in the world, well, shitposting on Twitter is nothing. So your action doesn't meet what your goal is, right? It's like, if you wanted to put a shelf up, you'd have to go and get hammers and put it in and hammer it in, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't then go on Twitter and just fuck about for a few hours if you wanted to put a shelf up. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I think as well is always the danger as well that, some people who are like, for example, liberals or whatever, like could, you could lose them engaging even on a very basic ground floor level with engaging with leftist ideas, even having a soft introduction to it. If you have someone who, for example, is constantly like getting into the tanky ML debate, for example, and that's the only kind of leftist sort of engagement that they see, there's a very harmful effect there. Something that theoretically could lead them to sort of looking at leftist ideas and then not necessarily start navel gazing exclusively at theory, but also decide they want to like join a union, go out and join a union, do canvassing for like a more progressive candidate. I think even though like you can't say like Twitter is the real world to too much of a dramatic extent, that is still a concern that that I think is fairly valid. You're still turning some people away with the way you conduct yourself as a leftist on social media.
Yeah, I think that I think that I've probably got like a more doom-pilled outlook, like a more black-pilled outlook on social media. I don't think any of it really matters. Like, and I'm being a bit hyperbolic. Like, there's definitely some great stuff you can do with social media. Like, charity. We tweeting charity stuff and helping to promote that and getting involved in charity events and helping to organise in real life stuff. Sure, there's stuff like that you can do, but this shit posting and stuff, who fucking looks at it? Like, it's not like, I don't know, like everyone in these different communities is all hyper online, broadly speaking. I don't think that like people are looking at left Twitter arguing about the Holodomor and Stalin are looking at that and going, oh yeah, leftism looks a bit shit. Like, I just don't think that gets seen broadly, my concern with it is more so just the fact that people are engaging in it, and if they want to, fine, up to you, but don't think that you're actually pushing your ideas forward or spreading class consciousness. Like, I'm sorry, but like your fucking normie in the street isn't gonna you're not gonna unlock class consciousness in their brain by telling them that Stalin was based, actually, right?
Yeah, true. I don't know.
But like I say, I don't want people to think like, oh, it's worthless. Like, it can be entertaining. Like, entertainment is fine. Like, be honest with yourself. Like, and also I think, try not to shit on each other so much. Like, we've got it hard enough as it is. Why are we fighting like bitterly over such stupid shit? Like, I made a joke out of it earlier about like this discourse around a very dark topic, right?
Was that the necrophilia?
Yeah. I didn't want to say it. I don't know. I don't know if coming on to someone else you were talking about that specifically, but in any case, I made a joke out of it. It's like, these people that are discussing this and dissecting it, like, are they fucking FBI agents or something? Like, are they plants? Like, do people not realize it makes us look fucking like unhinged potentially, right? So I do think that, yeah, sure, maybe like there's some discourse that maybe does get seen more broadly and maybe gives people perceptions. Like, I don't know, like the trouble is there's no data, there's no studies, there's nothing to say, oh well, left Twitter spoke about this issue and it had this effect. Like, we just don't have that kind of information, right?
Sorry, I've just got a reason. Stalin's are actually meme. Haha, great comment, but yeah, sorry. I just wanted to read a tweet that got sort of quarantined for a second. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think an interesting like point you made there as well is like the studies don't exist. It's going to be really fascinating to look back. For all we know, Twitter may in some ways hopefully not exist in like 5 to 10 years, but it's going to be interesting, like, when the longitudinal studies are done, like how much of an influence this had, both in terms of like real world effects, but also just on like us as people, like wherever, especially people because you and I think we're about the same age. I think you're 34.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm 36, so it's going to be interesting. But then obviously it does. It is concerning how like people much younger than us are going to be sort of influenced by it. So yeah, like I have 2 young nephews, and I'm just like, I'm going to flip my shit if I find out they've ever joined Twitter, for example. Even though a lot of the time I do enjoy being on there, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. So yeah, I don't know. It's tricky, man. But So if you want to do a Q&A after this, I've just got like 2 more things I wanted to ask, and then if you want to go, that's cool. Or if you want to take some questions from chat, we can do that as well. One thing, again, this was another thing from last night's stream that really struck me. You said you were talking about like how you don't expect to be streaming, even though it's like your primary revenue source at the moment. It is your job right now. You don't see yourself doing this like when you're 50 or something. And personally, that's something I've just never considered. Like, I'm doing this more or less as a hobby. I obviously, I want to make affiliates so I can get subs. It means I can do more. I can be more flexible. I can get like better stuff like emotes and stuff. But I'm just curious. Like, that was quite an interesting thing to hear, because again, it was another thing where I was like, you're very conscious of that. But I wonder how many other streamers, especially even ones that personally, for example, do people really think that this is like a long-term thing? Because I would worry about that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of live in the moment, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't sort of think too far down the road. We don't think about what the future holds, and I've done that for a long time. I still do to a degree. Um, so yeah, I don't think anyone ever thinks about their own mortality, you could call it, as a streamer,
Yeah.
But there's plenty people within my short time on here that have been, you know, fairly prominent streamer, 70, 80, 90 viewers, and then they've kind of just slowly faded away. Like sometimes through choice, they've changed their content, or they've taken a step back, or they've taken a break. Um, and in fact, I'd say it normally is like through choice, or choices in they don't put the same kind of effort in because like maybe they just don't want to, they want to take a break, and yeah, I think that no one's going to be around forever, right? Like everyone has got a shelf life, and um, I think the best thing to do is just be honest about that, and have like an idea of, okay, so if I'm doing this now, like what skills am I going to accrue doing this, and how can that help me, like going forward past the streaming. I don't know.
I think it's interesting, like when Zanderhall was talking about like his situation, he talked about the fact like he was because of the abusive relationship with his mother and that he was going to move back in with his uncle, but his uncle wanted him to get a real job rather than just stream. And it's interesting the fact that he's so young. It's like, if this runs out, even if he does it for a few more years and it runs out, like, has he lost a lot of time? Has he lost a lot of experience? And I think that's a really profound thing to think. And the other thing as well is, like, I know Destiny's talked on stream before. I don't know if he went too deep into it, but he's definitely mentioned in the past that, like, he could probably retire in about 5 to 10 years because he's not a guy who spends he earns a shit ton of money, but he doesn't really buy a lot. So he's probably going to have like at least 1 million or so saved up by the time he's like 40 or something. So that's someone who has definitely planned and thought ahead. And again, it's just something I'm concerned about. It's something like I ponder about, are there going to be like streamers who do content similar to yours who just won't consider this and then, potentially find themselves, destitute effectively if they've missed all those other opportunities.
Yeah, well, I think that like people will easily, if they've got the audience or whatever, like they can probably move to like some sort of content creation, maybe as part of a brand or a company.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think the only thing is maybe they wouldn't have quite the flexibility as being like a lone wolf or whatever. But yeah, I think that like doing this develops a certain skill set that's then transferable, right? And that's an interesting thing to think about because obviously previously I considered like working in an office. That's what is experience, right? But actually, like all of this is invaluable experience for broadcasting. Like you could feasibly move this to a job in like a major broadcaster or something like that. So, I think that like if you do manage to make a go of it, like as long as you do the right things, it can have a tangible impact on your life,
Yeah.
and can mean it takes a different path. And yeah, I mean, I just think everyone should give it a go. Like if you think you got something to say and you think you can make interesting content, then put yourself out there and see what happens.
It's about having the right reasons, isn't it? Because like basically one reason I have like the time to do all this is because basically like I don't want to go too deep into it, but basically I nearly died a couple of years ago and I had to leave my career. Like literally I was manager of like a bookstore. I had a career. I was like potentially going to move to another part to run a bigger store and stuff, and then my life just got completely taken out from under me. So that's why I have all this time. And like, yes, I have a part-time job now in a record store. It's like, yeah, if I could prop that up by doing like Twitch, even if I never make partner, getting a bit more in from affiliate, that'd be fucking awesome. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I want to be doing this because I enjoy it. And at the moment, like literally when I'm not streaming or sleeping or whatever, I've been like creating thumbnails, I've been editing VODs and stuff, and it's made me feel really energized in a way I haven't in years. But the thing was, before I started streaming, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I've got to think about these metrics. This is what I need to do to be able to get subscribers, da-da-da-da. And I did think for the longest time, I was like, I'm interested in politics. I'm going to focus on politics. And then as it started getting to the process of me actually doing streaming, I was just kind of like, yeah, this would pull numbers. The drama would be good for metrics, but I don't enjoy it. And I think this is the thing that more people need to think about as well, is when they start going into streaming or doing YouTube, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And if you're not enjoying it, especially with the amount of work you put in, maybe you should think about like backing off or trying something different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't know. I think, yeah, and the thing is, I think it's important to recognize, like, some people are happy just like, even though they think capitalism is bad and all that, they're happy just having their job and getting on with their life
Yeah.
and engaging with the content and stuff like that, you know. And I think one thing to kind of be aware of is like not to like fetishize the idea of doing something like this, right? Like some people just don't want to do that, and that's fine. But you know, I just hate the idea of like someone sat there thinking, "Damn, like I've got these ideas," and you know, it's the nature of capitalism though. Like art and stuff just isn't seen
Yeah.
as productivity, right? Do you see what I mean?
It has to be massively commodified and it has to make a return. You can't just do it for the creative enjoyment of it.
Yeah, yeah,
But at the same time, I
exactly.
mean, like, I don't want to come across as someone saying like you should only do it if under very strict circumstances. Like the DJ Deadmau5 once said that, like, even if you try it and it doesn't go anywhere, at least you know. You know for sure. You've tried it, and then you'll find out. And even if you reach one person who can like sort of share your enthusiasm or get something from your work, then it's worth it. And I do agree with that. Dicey says that me. Yes, Dicey. Jesus, Rona's on me. Okay, so this will be the last question, and if you want, we can do some Q&A if anyone's got
Yeah,
anything.
sure.
It's a bit vague, even if it's only for like the immediate future. What are you hoping for, or what ambitions do you have?
Okay. So yeah, basically, my ambitions are to. I mean, when I started, I definitely chased like the subscribers and stuff, but it got to the stage where, I mean, particularly when I like got partnered on YouTube, and now I've hit the metrics for partnership on Twitch. It's like there are means to an end. You've got to treat them as a means to an end. Once you meet the criteria, like you've got to pull the brakes on that a bit. Like, people get obsessed with their subs and stuff, and it's just like, I don't really care. Like, it's great to have a larger pool of people that will potentially engage with your content, but it doesn't really mean anything in a grander scheme of things. So I think for me, and this is kind of, I guess, what I'd kind of say to people who are looking to do this is like, yeah, look, treat that stuff as a means to an end, get to where you need to get to, and then just focus. And this is what I'm going to do on making like the best, most entertaining content that you possibly can, kind of invest your time in that. Because if you do that, the numbers will come. And yeah, you can do things to like try and boost your numbers and stuff. But, if it happens naturally, that means it's more likely to stick, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, I thought starting out, oh, I'm going to need to get on this person's stream, that person's stream, that person's stream to kind of get the numbers and to succeed. But I kind of realized, like, eventually it will happen, but you don't need to chase it. You don't need to be knocking on everyone's door. You can just be a bit more relaxed with it. And, so yeah, my goal was at the start of the year was to hit YouTube partner by June. I did it by like February. I did it by March. My goal was to hit Twitch partner by the end of the year. Well, I've unfortunately had some problems with that, but I've hit the metrics for that at least. So although I've had some unforeseeable things happen, like I'm satisfied that like I've kind of achieved, some pretty cool stuff this year. And I think next year it's a case of just, growing. Like I'm working on this new thing where I'm going to do a debate thing. So every first Saturday of every month there's something called the Showdown. It's like this debate show I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to like focus on Chud night and book guests, prominent guests, bigger topics, stuff like that. It's really just about taking what I've got and growing it and making it all like bigger. Do you know what I mean? That's my kind of focus, really. I think too many people get bogged down in, oh, this number, that number, that number. It's all a load of bullshit. Like, fuck that shit. Just do, the best you can to make the best content you can. That's That's it. That's the fucking secret formula. I think, is to just do the best content you can. I know it sounds obvious, but everything else is window dressing to me. Doesn't mean anything. Just focus on what matters. I think is what I'm going to do. And hopefully, if anyone's listening to this and wants to end up doing this, then you should do that as well. That's the best way to handle this.
Awesome. It's a good place to actually end the interview part. Are you okay to do some Q&A?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, if anyone's got anything, just drop it in the chat. Or if not, I'll let you finally get off the air for today.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's like the thing is like obviously coming on these streams and stuff like because I thought, how can I do it in a way that like everyone benefits? Do you know what I mean? And I think I figured out that ending my stream and raiding into someone and then doing an interview is probably the best way to do it, because then the streamer gets the few views, right, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Anything in chat? If not, we can let Chud go.
Go on, there must be at least one question for me.
It can be about CBT,
Yeah,
as long as it's not TOS. As long as it's not TOS violating. How do you manage unhealthy parasocials? That's from Kez.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah. I remember Kez was asking about this last night. Okay, so I think that So parasocial relationships are tricky, right? Because to get very meta about it, you do need to have a certain degree of like parasociality, particularly like at the start. It's kind of strange, but I think that like you just need to set what your boundaries are, and you can set the boundaries in like a non kind of rude way. Like you can just sort of mention it on stream. You can just talk about it a little bit, talk about parasocial relationships, talk about how the dynamics can mean people see you as a friend, and just be clear and be like, look, the reality is I'm here to entertain you, or I'm here to educate you, or whatever it is you're doing. It might come across that we're friends, or it might come across that we've got this close relationship, but we don't. Like, you're watching my stuff, and I might respond to your chat and things like that, but we're not friends. We're just, I don't know, it's you just got to be clear about it, and I think talking about it on stream can be quite powerful, because like you're not like individualizing anyone, or kind of having to have an awkward DM conversation. You're just talking about it broadly, and hopefully people that are listening will get the message, and look, if it gets to it and you've tried, unfortunately, and if the person's like DMing you just got to be clear and say, hey, look, just to let you know, I appreciate you've got an affinity for what I do. That's fantastic, but we're not friends. Like, I'm a streamer, you're a viewer. We've got to keep it like that. It can't go any further. It's a difficult one.
Vases, do you really enjoy CBT?
Yeah, it's my favourite. Well, after this, that's what I'm going to be doing, a bit of CBT. So yeah.
Radinsky's got how do you manage to stay cool-headed and all of that? I think, do you mean like in terms of what Chud was just saying about managing unhealthy parasocial relationships, Toto? Is that what you meant? So I'm just wondering if Chud's actually just covered that question as well. Just give Toto a minute.
Yeah, maybe more broadly, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, that's the thing, Well, I mean, generally, like, do you find yourself sometimes like struggling to stay cool-headed? And I know sometimes you get really annoyed on stream.
Yeah. I mean, look, so sometimes like there's times where I do get genuinely annoyed, and I think that people can tell, because like obviously I'm probably a bit more vicious, or I'm a bit more short, or I'm a bit snappier, or I'm not quite as jovial about my anger, But there is like a degree of fucking like performative nature of it, right? Like, of course, you play up to it a bit, and particularly like if you're having like a debate with someone and they're just in the chat, you sort of can get a bit exacerbated and play up on it, and it's fun and people enjoy it and people like seeing you mold, But what I would say is like I don't say anything I don't believe or don't mean, at that time anyway. Like maybe I'll change my mind or realize I was wrong or whatever, but I mean everything I say, even if I say it in a provocative way. You know.
Do you ever, I'm gonna, because Toto followed up by saying like more like how toxic the debate could be. So like staying cool-headed, especially if you're into something really sort of heavy.
Yeah.
Do you handle that, or how do you, especially how do you either handle that live or like reflecting on it afterwards?
Yeah, I think you just got to make sure that like for example, there's some stuff I'm just like I'm not going to cover that, and just because it's hot and everyone's talking about it,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think that like you don't have to like engage with it just because everyone else is, and I think just being able to go, now I'm not going to cover that, like it's a bit too much for me, like that's fine. And I think like people have this idea that, oh, you've got to cover the stuff, like for example all this Destiny shit, right? Like I managed to like sustain a pretty reasonable viewership despite I covered the Vosh and Destiny debate on YouTube, but other than that I've barely spoken about it, if at all. So it's like you don't have to necessarily cover the latest drama, especially if it's stuff that is, unironically like maybe triggering for you, or it's something that hits close to home. Like, yeah, you can sort of like you can just take a step back from that and not cover it, and talk about something else. And I think having a space where you do have a place you can come, people can come and not have to think about the fucking dark shit of the
Yeah.
world out there, and you can just have a laugh, and you can stick fucking my Medium article into a voice fucking chat and let it play through for 6 minutes. Like, it's okay. That's just dumb shit that people can come and laugh at, right? It's like you wouldn't go to like a clown show, right, and demand that the clown go and fix the world problems, or
Yeah.
like speak on this serious social issue. You go there because the clown's funny and the clown's clowning around the place and you're laughing at the clown, and that's good. You could have all sorts of shit going on, but hey, let's go to the clown show and have some fun. I'm the
That's
clown show.
that's kind of one of the things that Sorry, hang on. What's going on? Put your dick away and fuck off. Okay, I'm going to allow that, kids. I don't know what you're talking about there. Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying like that goes sort of back to my thing about like the content I wanted to do. Like, should I just focus on politics because I know it'll pull numbers, or should I just explore things that interest me? So, for example, I do music stuff already. I'm really like thinking about doing like even stuff like paranormal stuff, just things like that, which really interest me. There's a Twitch streamer and YouTuber I think's just gone live called Flower Gothic. She does they do fanfic readings. I'm actually going to do something with them soon. I'm going to do a voiceover on one of their videos, and then I'm actually going to read something with them live. So that should be cool. So yeah, it's that same thing you were just saying. Dicey asked a little way back, how do you separate what topics that are worth talking about versus what topics aren't? Because a lot of things aren't that important but get hyper focused on.
Yeah, so obviously everyone's got different ways of doing it. I just look at it and think, I've got a few criteria. Like, do I know like enough about this topic to speak about it? And often, you don't need to be an expert. You can just know a few bits and pieces, or be able to read about it, and that's enough. Especially if you're making like more comedy orientated or entertainment orientated content, because your personality carries it through. And sometimes there can be stuff that maybe you're not quite equipped to cover, but you've got a bit of information to go over, but you can make that part of the routine. Like, the joke is, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I'm talking about this anyway. So sometimes, like, even your lack of knowledge on something, as long as you present it in like an honest way, like you're not saying I'm a fucking expert on this, like, you're making it clear, even if it's like as a joke, I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Do you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, for me, it's quite easy. Is it going to be interesting? To be really meta about it, it's like, if I turn this into a segment on YouTube, will people be interested in watching it? Because that's a big part of what I do, my YouTube channel. So yeah, it's that sort of stuff. I think that like the unfortunate reality across the board, even people that are like serious about politics, they will sometimes like focus on stuff that isn't very important in the grand scheme of things. But it's because that's what gets the drama, that's what gets the views, that's what gets the conflict and the people through the door.
Yeah.
So there will be like a week of talking about what Destiny's saying because he's like a prominent figure, and people tune in for that stuff, and yeah, like it is what it is. And I think if anyone's out there and they're concerned that like something isn't being covered, my advice to them is always, well, get involved, or find someone that is talking about it, because normally there is, unless it's extremely niche, and support them. I think that, like, I really advocate for, like, content creators to make the content that they want to make, not like to sort of satisfy a particular aspect or something like that, because you just end up with people being miserable if they're kind of forced into a situation where they feel like they've got to create this content. It's not really what they want to do. It doesn't generate, like, I don't know, like, there's obviously a duty sometimes to cover certain things, perhaps, but that's up to the content creator to decide. And I think that, it's up to each person to manage that as they see fit, I guess.
Welcome back, Sheep. We're just doing some Q&A. Have you got a question for Chud, or has anyone else got questions for Chud? I want to let you go soon, because I know you've been streaming for about 13 hours.
See if there's I'll just respond to something Lube Waffle said. So Lube Waffle said you'd be really aggressive with chuds in the chat in your early streams, and that's true. I think early on, like, certainly when you're like a 10 viewer Andy, if you've got someone in chat and one of them goes, well, you've lost 10% of your viewership, like that, Whereas if you've got 100 viewers and one goes, you've lost 1%. So, there was always a sort of focus on having as many people in as possible, certainly like at the start. And I think, having been influenced by, like, Vosh, I thought, oh yeah, I'll argue with fucking chuds. I'll get the fucking chuds. I'll bring the chuds on. Oh, I may just got a question as well, I think, so I can answer that. But yeah, bring the chuds on and dunk on them and make them look like an idiot. And I did it once, and I just didn't really get anything out of it. I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit boring.
Yeah.
They're just really fucking stupid. Like, they made some ridiculous argument about Muslims, and I was like, what's the point of this? And from then on, I still would argue with people and meme on them, but I kind of wasn't paying that much attention to it. But now it's got to the stage where my chat's so busy, people might just be fucking disruptive, and they'll be distracting the conversation away, and there'll be this debate happening in chat, and I'm just like, nah, just get rid of that person, time them out, ban them. Like, I'm just not interested in, like, I just think it ruins the dynamic now my chat's so big. Like, I want to be engaging with the people that are here to watch me, or even people that are critical of me but do it in a good faith way. That's fine. But there's like this person called LibLogic, and they keep making new accounts and joining, and they keep making these accounts and joining. And I'm just like, I just ban them every time. It's become a bit of a meme. It's like they'll come in as LibLogic6, and I'm like, right, ban. See you later, LibLogic6, or is it LibLogic7 now? And again, it's all part of the fun and the routine and the memes. So yeah, I think that, like, as you grow, you kind of adapt and move away from stuff that seems good and fun at the start, but yeah, sorry, I'm Major asked, would you ever consider making a list of small vital channels you wouldn't cover for smaller channels to cover? I'm going to be really honest with you. No. And I'll tell you why. It's because, whilst I think there needs to be support for people, and people might need an extra leg up and stuff like that, I think there's something in putting the legwork in and being rewarded by that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if someone came to me and said, oh, hey, have you got like a recommendation for someone to cover? I might be like, oh, yeah, here you go. There's this channel that's really small, but for your size, maybe is worth looking at, But in terms of like an overarching list, it's like, no one gave me a list. Like, I had to go and do the legwork, right? Like, I was fucking out there looking for these channels and, stuff like that. I think there's something valuable in you engaging with that, because then, you're finding it yourself, and your own personality will lead you to your own conclusions and your own channels and your own content, and that will come across, and it will be your content, And whilst there's a degree of faking it till you make it, I think if you're kind of looking to a list like that, there's something valuable about doing it yourself and also fucking it up, making mistakes, learning, improving it. I really do value, like, putting your own input in, because then it's going to be more of you coming out at the end.
I think people sometimes struggle to appreciate the value of making a mistake, especially in a live format like this. It's obviously something you're going to be nervous or perhaps even terrified about, but at the same time, if you can handle and reflect on a mistake in a constructive way, then it's a useful experience to get over, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Sheep has a very deep question for us. I hate you, sheep. Have you ever taken a giant shit and then thought, "Well, that's how much dick I could take up my ass"? I have.
That's, that's not something I've considered. No, but I'll bear that in mind when I'm on the toilet next. Okay.
Okay, I think we're coming up on 2 hours of streaming there. I think I'm gonna. I think this might be a good place to stop. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate having you coming on. I really deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
If you ever want to come on again, then please feel free. But yeah, and also thank you so much to everyone who in the chat. Thank you, especially thank you to everyone who follows. I'm at 52 followers now. That means so much to me. Thank you. So. Yeah, if you unless you've got any final memes you want to share, then we can draw a line under it.
No. It's been thanks for having me on. It's been fun. I hope chat got something out of it. And yeah, you obviously everyone knows where to find me. Hopefully, just search Chud Logic in all your good social media platforms, and I'll be there. And yeah, I guess that's it. All right.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot. No worries. Catch you later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.